Many speedrunners have made videos on this topic, and I've watched a few of them. But every time I do, I always find some step or thought process that I disagree with because it never worked for me as an individual. And I finally figured out why. It's because I have a disability. I have a unique mindset I need to enter in order to speedrun without giving up or injuring myself in the process. I've had friends who know about my condition ask me where they should start, and question whether or not they have the patience to learn something like a speedrun. With hard work, dedication, and most importantly, willingness to learn at your own pace, I feel like speedrunning is something anybody could do, able-bodied or otherwise. I'm sure lots of new people are going to see this video, so just to be thorough, let me briefly describe my disability. I have a mild case of cerebral palsy which affects the entire right side of my body, most egregiously my right hand. I play games better with one hand than I do with two. There are games I can play with two hands if I consciously think about it, but I'll almost always play better with just my left. I used to showcase this regularly on Twitch years ago, but ever since I quit streaming to focus on this channel, my disability hasn't exactly been relevant to most of my content. So I don't include it in videos anymore unless I have to. A lot of the speedrun footage you'll see in this video is old, and I didn't plan on using it for an OmniTalk video, so a hand cam won't be present for much of this video. If you'd like to see it in action though, I made another video on accessibility in gaming and how I think it should be done where I included a hand cam. Go watch that if you're curious. That totally wasn't a shameless plug, I promise. Remember that this is a disabled perspective and not the disabled perspective. Remember that I'm just one person, and what works for me may not work for someone else. Someone else just like me could disagree with this entire video, and if that happens, that's okay. Nothing I'm about to say is meant to invalidate anyone else's approach. This video simply describes what works for me, and why I think newcomers to speedrunning should try it my way. Also note that if you're looking to start speedrunning at a competitive level or as a career, this is not the video for you. This video is strictly for speedrunning for your own personal fulfillment, because that's why I do it. Lastly, this video will assume you have at least a passing interest in speedrunning and know some of the lingo. But in case you don't, I will put what certain things mean on screen. Capiche? We cool? Good. Now let's get started. So, if you've looked up a video like this, you've probably heard some people say one of the hardest steps to take is simply picking a game to run. And that's definitely true, especially for me. It goes without saying you should pick a game you love because you'll be playing it a lot. But if it were that simple, I wouldn't have made this video, now would I? There's lots of games I love casually, but have no interest in speedrunning either because they're too technical, too long, or even too short in some cases. Look at any 3D Zelda speedrun and tell me that looks easy. I dare you. I love playing JRPGs casually. Hell, my entire branding is inspired by Xenoblade Chronicles and Final Fantasy, but... I'm sorry, what? 7 hours? I don't think I can physically sit in one place for that long, so no thanks. I'm sure lots of people share my sentiment on long games, but the idea of a speedrun being too short might be new to some people. Lots of people might look at a leaderboard where the world record is around 5 to 10 minutes and think, oh, it's short, I can learn this without dedicating hours of my life to it. In my experience, runs that are that short often involve really complicated glitches or precise movement that need to be executed several times throughout the course of a run, and more often than not, it's more that I can pull off without feeling pain. This is purely a perspective thing though. Where you may see a fun 5-minute romp for a game, I see a tutorial on how to give myself carpal tunnel. Needless to say, I have to think very carefully about what games I speedrun. As of writing this script, I have runs submitted for 10 different games on speedrun.com, and I've noticed that I prefer runs that take me anywhere from 30 to 90 minutes to complete. Super Metroid 100% takes me a little over 2 hours to do, and that's about as long as I'm willing to spend on any run. Looking at my list of runs, you'll notice that I mostly stick to one category in any given game and rarely deviate from it. These two exceptions you see are the result of peer pressure. I have no plans to grind these categories. This is quite different from any big name record holding speedrunners such as Cheese or Linkus7, who have dedicated their entire online presence to mastering several categories in a game. There's nothing wrong with this behavior if you find that you really enjoy a game, but I get bored easily, so I move on to a new game after reaching my goal. Okay, so you got your gaming category picked out, and if there's a Discord server for its community, you probably joined it. If you approach any given community and ask how to start learning your speed game, they'll often tell you to consult a tutorial on the leaderboard's resource tab, watch the world record, or visit the wiki if they have one. I'm gonna go full maverick here and tell you no. None of those are how to start learning your game. In the best case scenario, you've chosen a game you've beaten several times already. You know how it starts, you know how it ends, and you have the core sequence of events already mapped out in your mind. Super Metroid and Luigi's Mansion are two examples of that for me. If you have this knowledge starting out, just time a few runs without any further research. Simply timing a run will put you in a mindset where you can't waste time attacking every enemy or talking to every NPC, and suddenly you're playing faster than you ever did casually. Repeat this maybe 2 or 3 times and you'll gain a much more meticulous understanding of your game's controls, physics, and how to efficiently use them to achieve your goal. That's the second time I mentioned goals, and I haven't talked about how to set reasonable ones, so let's talk about that. After finishing my first timed run in a game, which is usually very long and full of mistakes, I compare it to the world record and pick a time somewhere between that and my first time as a goal. For instance, my first time in Donkey Kong Country was somewhere around 2.5 hours. Looked at the world record, it was just over 31 minutes at the time, so I told myself I would be happy with anything under an hour. And I managed to get there within 5 runs, fewer than 10 days apart from each other, which surprises me even now. Well, I really should say 5 PBs, because one habit I'm still teaching myself to break is the early reset trap. That is, resetting after just one early game mistake. Any runner could fall into it, beginner or veteran, and it's in your best interest not to reset so much for 2 reasons. You'll more than likely make up lost time over the course of your run, and continuing your run despite a mistake allows you to keep your late game practice in check. You may lose 30 seconds halfway through a run and still PB, and then when the next time comes you have a really easy split to save time in. But of course, this begs the question of how I got there. How did I get from this to this in 5 PBs? If you want my advice, which if you don't, why are you here? And believe me, I learned this the hard way. Do not learn any strats until you have at least a firm grasp on the art of staying alive. That goes for any game. I suggest you wait until you mentally adjust to speedrunning your game before you learn any tough strats. If you're trying to pull up pro strats while you're still dying left and right, simple enemy placement, or bad movement, you're going to get very frustrated very quickly and give up. About a year ago, I tried running Donkey Kong Country 2, mimicking the movement I saw the world record holder do. I would try to complete the first world in about 5 minutes, fail to do so, and give up before I even had one completed run to compare to. Needless to say, I don't do this anymore. With each new PB, I research one new strat to add to my run. Learning all the hard tricks from the get-go makes it feel like that's just how I'm supposed to play the game now. And if I can't do what I'm supposed to, that was very discouraging to me. By adding a new strat with every PB I get, I see the time save right in front of me, which makes the strat feel more tangible as a result. Months later, I returned to Donkey Kong Country, starting with the first game. When I was ready to learn DK strats, I learned a few from Snoman Gaming's beginner tutorial, which is a great resource if you're interested in running DKC1. But I quickly learned that some are out of my league entirely. Some of the crazy things top runners do cause me physical pain to pull off multiple times. I realized that if I want to do this, I had to reevaluate my priorities. Am I speedrunning for a top time, or am I speedrunning for me? Ultimately, I decided that if I want to do this without losing my mind or motor skill in the one hand that works, I gotta speedrun for me, using whatever means I could do. Any strat that caused my hand to strain, I considered off limits. Excluding certain techniques doesn't take away from the hard work I put in to get my 55:49. That's about an hour and a half faster than my first splits and 25 minutes off world record. Good enough for me. But some games are just intrinsically painful from the get-go. I had to retire from Bloodstained Curse of the Moon completely because it caused my hand to cramp up every time I ran it. Ultimate mode gives the main character a dash, which pretty much forces you to mash a button, whichever you set it to, for the entirety of a 25 to 30 minute run if you're good, along with every other button to move, jump, attack, switch characters, and so on. And you're not making any progress without dashing everywhere, so I did. Now, I'd like to talk some about how to mentally approach speedrunning. I've had at least one person express interest in the scene with the idea that it's all about beating other people's times and nothing more. I think anyone who's tried speedrunning will tell you that it's self-improvement first, competition second. That's why world record holders continue running their game even after reaching the top of the leaderboard. Because being first place doesn't necessarily mean you got the perfect time. Chances are you made some mistakes and the time can go even lower. I can only think of one game where the perfect run is known to have been achieved, and that's an Atari game called Dragster, the record for which is 5.570 seconds, tied by 20 different users on SRC. The time literally cannot go lower without hacking. For most games, we don't know how long the perfect run is, and that's part of the fun. When you think of speedrunning as a collaborative effort to find the lowest possible time to complete a game in, it becomes a lot more fun, and focusing on breaking your own records is key, whether you're new to your speed game or a veteran runner. What's important to realize is there are no bad runs, only long runs. Everyone on a board had to start somewhere. I guarantee you simply had to work his way up to being a world record contender. He didn't get there overnight, I promise. Climbing your way up to the top of a board is great, but that shouldn't be your priority starting out. If you jump into a speed game expecting to get world record overnight, you're in the wrong headspace and you're gonna get frustrated and disappointed very quickly. While I'm on the subject of how not to think about speedrunning, I'd like to make it very clear that there's nothing wrong with any category you could possibly run, including and especially easy mode. I run Metroid Fusion in Japanese on easy mode because it removes a lot of randomness from the game. Aside from lower damage output and missile pickups giving you 10 instead of 2, boss doors don't shoot beams, and most of the bosses are made predictable. It turns Metroid Fusion from a luck-dependent run into a more movement-dependent one, which I like. I like knowing that if a run dies, it's my fault, and that there's something I can do about it. But I shouldn't have to explain the nuance within Metroid Fusion's easy mode to justify my running it. The fact is, a PB is a PB, and a world record is a world record. It doesn't matter if it's by 2 minutes or 20 seconds, or on hard or easy mode or any other category. But some people may not even be prepared to share their times when they're starting out, and there's nothing wrong with that. You may not have the equipment necessary to record your runs, or possibly you're embarrassed by how long your first splits are. Personally, that's not me. I like submitting every PB I get no matter what it is, because it creates a list laying out my progress in whatever game I'm running, which I like. But there's no law that says if you speedrun, you must submit your times to SRC. You may be interested in a game that you have no choice but to run on an emulator, only to check the rules and see that emulators are banned. Allow me to take a minute to explain why that is. Emulators for older consoles such as the NES and the SNES have progressed to the point that they run near flawlessly, so when you look at the speedrun rules for games on those systems, there's probably no extra guidelines for emulated runs. But when you look at leaderboards for games on more complex consoles, say the GameCube, Wii, Xbox 360, and so on, you'll see that emulated runs are only allowed up to a certain time threshold, if not banned altogether. This is because more modern emulators are less accurate than the authentic hardware they're trying to mimic, and are often very demanding in terms of computer hardware. In a perfect world, every speedrun ever would allow emulators, because they make the leaderboard much more accessible to those who can't afford obsolete consoles and the tools needed to record them. However, moderators don't want to create an environment where only rich people with god-tier computers can submit runs on emulators, so many modern games ban them entirely. Even if you do have a beastly gaming rig, newer emulators are prone to abnormal behaviors that cause longer load times or glitches that don't exist on authentic hardware. So speedrun communities are likely to ban them for that reason. With that said, if you can competently run an emulator like Dolphin or Citra, there's nothing stopping you from speedrunning a game on there for your own personal fulfillment and nothing else, and just not submitting. You may find that glitches are too technical for your liking, or every category in your game of choice is too long. In this scenario is when I'll tell you to fight the power and make your own rules. This is how we get meme categories like All Signs in Mario 64, or Bird of Pie in real life for Cookin' Mama 2 Dinner with Friends. The lengths that people go, not just to make a run faster, but also to maintain interest in a game by making up joke categories, is a beautiful, hilarious, sometimes dangerous thing. On paper, this sounds like a very casual approach to speedrunning, what many consider a hardcore faction of elite gamers, and you know what, it probably is at its core. I'm not saying speedrunning for competition or a career is bad. If you get to that point, great. I just think that if that's your priority starting out, you're in it for the wrong reason and you'll wind up burned out and disappointed. I started speedrunning 3 years ago because I like challenging myself, and I keep doing it because it's shown me that I really can do anything I set my mind to. The dopamine rush I get when I PB is a euphoria unlike anything I've ever felt, and I think if you approach it the way I do, you'll have the same experience I did. If you decide to take my advice and start speedrunning, remember first and foremost that speedrunning is a competition against yourself more than anything. It sounds counterintuitive, I know. But take your time, run whatever game you're comfortable with, ease yourself into new strats, go by your own rules if you have to, and celebrate every victory you get, big or small. The fact is, you improved, and that's worth celebrating. The decision I made to start speedrunning has easily become the most fulfilling and rewarding one I've made as a gamer, and if you've been on the fence about it, I hope my approach will allow you to share that feeling with me. Good luck, have fun, and thanks for watching.